the tranquil town of Vepner bursts into life with the arrival of the Caledon 400, round 6 of the National Off-Road Championship. The friendly people of Vepner open their arms to the off-road fraternity every year, and they return the compliment by filling the air with the sights, sounds and action of friendly and serious rivalry. As is traditional in off-road racing, the starting positions for the race proper would be determined by a time trial on day 1, this one over 64 kilometers. The time trial is used for different purposes by different competitors. Some go as fast as they can to get the best starting position for the following day's serious racing, which can cause problems on its own, while others treat it as a shakedown or recce to see whether their vehicle is set up well enough for the terrain and have a look at what kind of conditions are to be expected. Even so, the time trial does form part of the race and it counts towards overall time. Unfortunately, as in any other form of motorsport, off-road racing can also be dangerous and injuries, although uncommon, do occur. But the Vepner Off-Road Motor Club had made provision for just such a case, and with MRI in close attendance, the outcome wasn't too serious. After all the trials and tribulations of the time trial, which saw a number of surprise starting positions the following day, final preparations were completed for the more than 300 kilometers of grueling off-road racing that lay ahead. And when you are without a navigator, you have to have your strategies well planned, as Rob Walk explains.
Well, behind Jepic and I've got Nardis behind me, which are 2 twin-seaters, and I think, it's all very well to try and go ahead, but I think I'm going to try and use them as much as possible. And then perhaps towards the last lap, really race. And let's see what happens.
The father and son team led the special vehicles off in their V Motors Epson Racing Raceco, determined to set a fast pace from the beginning. Next off was Walk in his Super Pave Raceco, who wouldn't have the luxury of being able to swap driving duties or relying on a navigator for route instructions, while Nardis Alberts and Johan Kutzer in their Rapsa Raceco took off third. The southeastern part of the Free State was ideally suited to provide a stiff challenge to South Africa's off-roading fraternity, with Racing Section 1 run over almost 200 kilometers in the direction of De Wetstorp. Just outside Vepner on the Caledon River and the Steel Bridge provided an excellent vantage point to our cameramen and spectators, who would see the competitors twice as they negotiated a loop over and under the bridge. The Chefex were going hard, while Walk was being careful not to make an early mistake. The sandy riverbank provided the competitors with an early challenge, with grip levels changing frequently. Alberts and Kutzer were still having to get to know each other under racing conditions as the navigator was making his debut on the Caledon 400, but Alberts knew what he was doing and was determined to reverse his non-finish result in the previous race. Next up was Bevan Berthold in his Raceco, closely followed by Hilton Laurie and Warren Martin in another Raceco, clearly having decided that putting on some early pressure would be the ideal way of getting Berthold to make a mistake. Berthold had finished 3 out of the 5 races held so far this season and knew that an off-road race is usually won or lost on the final day, but Laurie and Martin were pushing hard. Wilfred Westlau was in another single-seater Raceco and was closely followed by Richard Carolyn in the lubrication equipment Raceco. The wide-open plains of the Eastern Free State look deceptively smooth, but on closer inspection, the terrain becomes rocky and hard, posing special problems for man and machine. Production vehicle champions and current points leaders Api Reneke and Robin Houghton in their Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser were going strong during the early part of the race, setting a cracking pace and looking at improving on their second position in the previous race. Former champion Kasi Kutsia and navigator Pete Swanepoel in the Castrol Toyota Hilux Turbo, who have not had a good season so far, but who finished well in the last race, the Beltrans Tongaland, were looking forward to a win. Special vehicle category points leaders Greg Harvey and Boy Stone in their Castrol Raceco were starting to make their presence felt, but not far behind them came Shamir Variawa and Sven Muller in their Porsche-powered Chenoweth, who had obviously been able to make up some ground. Neil Woolrich and Paul Vermark in their Vodacom Mitsubishi Pajero were another team looking at reversing their bad fortune of late. Having scored well in the first 3 events, they had failed to finish the last 2. Brothers Andrew and Chris Birkin in their turbo diesel Toyota Hilux were leading Class E in the production vehicle category and had 2 class victories and a second under their belt already. The Sabat Land Rover of husband and wife team Tony and Mandy Yo had taken the off-road world by storm this year and were in a position to seriously challenge for the class championship. Making his off-road debut was karting star and stadium competitor Claudio Piazzamusso, partnered by Richard Leake in the Sobe Ford. Piazzamusso is no stranger to flat-out racing over rough terrain, but long-distance racing is a different kettle of fish to short-course stadium off-road racing. Cliff Barker and Heinrich Lartigan in their Pennzoil Land Rover had fan trouble during the time trials and started 37th, some 16 minutes behind the leaders, but were catching up. The new BMW M3 engine was sounding good. The other four-wheelers in off-road racing are the quads, with the undisputed king, South Africa's Paris-Dakar hero Wikus van Deventer on his Gaulois Blonde Sally's Yamaha. Van Deventer was lying third in class. Christo van der Merwe on the Team Joburg Yamaha Answer racing machine was the current class championship leader and had won the first 2 races of the season. His closest rival in the class championship was Mark Breckel, winner of the last 2 events, pushing his Yamaha Banshee as hard as he could to catch van der Merwe. Paul Chomse from KwaZulu-Natal was also going hard on his Natal Protection Services Yamaha. He had been lying 4th in the open quad class, just 8 points ahead of Van Deventer. Things were starting to resemble a short course race as Anton Badenhorst was being caught by Breckel, who had caught up with van der Merwe. The tricky thing about racing these machines is that your balance has to be perfect, otherwise it can easily tip over. The quads were starting to catch up with some of the motor vehicles, and here Derek and Tina de Bruin in their Nissan Sani were being swamped by some riders eager for them to get on with things. In off-road racing, one often has to go through with it, even though all your instincts tell you it's going to be a tight squeeze. That was the case with Niels van der Walt, who was coming up to the same dry riverbed but made the mistake of going in too fast and ended up sitting on the wrong side of the machine. Quite a painful experience, I'm sure, but these off-roaders don't let a little pain get in their way. Some additional instructions for the rest of the field seemed like a good idea. To the two-wheelers now, and local hero Graham McLaughlin on his Lesotho Office Equipment Shell Honda was starting to catch up with some of the slower quads. He was leading the open category, while the 250 leader was his teammate Elmer Simons. Greg Aspinall on his Panasonic Russell Campbell Racing Kawasaki was pushing hard to catch up with Simons. He was lying second in the championship and needed the points. Third in the championship at only 2 points behind was Clayton Enslin on his Elna Fox Kawasaki, who was just as keen on catching Aspinall. Rion van Niekerk on his AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM was leading the 200cc category, and with 3 wins out of 5 under his belt, but only 1 point in the lead, he was also going strong. Next man through was Lance Trethui on his Lesotho Office Equipment Honda, closely pursued by his teammate Errol Dalton, 5th in the championship before this race. 250 class points leader Darrell Curtis, another Lesotho Office Equipment Honda entrant, was having to pull out all the stops to stay ahead of Rob Campbell on his Shimwell's Yamaha. Jeffrey Wallater, 4th in the 200 class championship before the Caledon 400, was lying second in the race on his AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM, but Andrew Ogden on his Kawasaki was putting up a great performance to stay in touch. Not far behind them came Wayne Farmer on another Kawasaki, the man who was that single point behind Van Niekerk in the championship before they came to the Eastern Free State. Lou Weppener, Boer hero from the last century, kept a watchful eye on proceedings as the local sports fields were turned into an off-road service park. Franz Čepek Senior and Junior made a quick pit stop and were back on their way to complete the second section of the race, eyeing a victory in the special vehicle category. Pete Swanepoel, navigating for Cassie Coetzee and the troubled Castrol Toyota Hilux double cab, watched proceedings bemusedly as one after the other of those funny-looking special vehicles pulled in for their pit stops. The Rapsa race car of Nardis Alberts and Johan Kutzer was in a tight battle for the lead, and they also made a quick getaway. Hilton Laurie and Warren Martin reported no problems with their race car and took to the road after taking on fuel and some liquids for the crew. Into the pits came Bevan Berthold in his race car after a grueling first section of the Caledon 400. There was some concern in the pits as his right front wheel had taken a bad knock. While the rest of the field came streaming in one after another, there was frantic activity around the car as the pit crew hurried to get the fuel in and effect the necessary repairs, so that their man, of course, could get out again to continue with the race. But hardest hit so far was the Castrol Toyota crew.
Yeah, it's a hot, sad story again. We was driving quite comfortably in a good position, and we're losing the four-wheel drive, and they stripped it now, and she did one of the CV brakes, and you know it was 65 k's from the beginning this morning, so we decided before we destroy anything. So what happened there is just, I've got a part here, and Gila stripped it, and we analysed that's the problem.